Welcome to the 5th Annual Global Surgery Student Alliance National Symposium, co-hosted with the University of Utah. My name is Dr. Sudha Jayaraman, and I'm a professor of surgery and director of the Center for Global Surgery here at the University of Utah. We are here to talk about global surgery, and it's worthwhile thinking about what that means. It's about ensuring the availability of high-quality surgical systems for whoever needs it throughout the world. And it represents a combination of clinical fields needed to deliver surgical care, academic disciplines necessary to evaluate and improve surgical systems, and fundamental public health principles that govern all health systems. For this symposium, we have a fantastic program that's been put together by an amazing group of students from all around the US, including Andrew and Kelly and the Utah GSSA team, as well as Anusha, Blake, Kristen, and the rest of the national GSSA team, including several fantastic undergrads, Gssa and Cassidy. We hope that the program will teach you and challenge you to expand how you think about global surgery, and even help you recognize the challenges and blind spots that exist in global partnerships. With 3 fantastic keynote speakers who will inspire you, starting today with Dr. Fitzgerald and Dr. Roy and Dr. Dominguez tomorrow, as well as a whole slew of amazing people who you will learn from over both days. But before we get started, I would like to take a moment to recognize this moment in time. This last year has been hard. Across the world, we've lost thousands of friends, colleagues, and family to an invisible enemy. Yet, it has also brought all of us immeasurably closer in this virtual space, even as we've had to be locked down in our communities. We've learned that global really means all of us. Today, I would like to recognize a recent loss that has especially hit the global community hard, and that is the loss of Dr. William Harkness, a pediatric neurosurgeon at the Great Ormond Street Hospital for Children in London. He was past president of the International Society of Pediatric Neurosurgery and the founder of Intersurgeon, a platform designed to bring together a number of global surgery groups to match global needs and resources. We dedicate today's session to Dr. Harkness and the untold numbers of healthcare workers who have lost this year. We're thankful for all of their service and hold them in the highest of our regards as our global surgery community moves forward towards a more just and equitable future. With that, I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Mark Harris, who's an anesthesiologist and who leads the Graduate Medical Education Office here at the University of Utah, to say a few words, because as you know, there's no surgery without anesthesia. Dr. Harris.
Oh, thank you, Dr. Jayaraman. That's very nice of you to say, and also very true. The screaming is very distracting. I was asked to speak very briefly, and those of you who know me will know that's very hard for me, but I will try to keep it short. Just as a preamble to some of what you're going to see over the next couple of days here, regarding relationships. I've been involved with global health work now for 20 plus years, and the relationship word is key to all that we're doing here for many, many reasons. And those of us who have a little more gray in our beards or a little less hair in our heads, or a little more gray on our heads would recognize, I hope, the truth to what I'm saying. Relationships between both your high-income colleagues in which you are engaged with this work and your low-income, low-resourced colleagues with whom you are partnering in this work are key to both the function of your work and the longevity of your work. If you can split these groups of people into 3, if you look at the people senior to yourself, and I understand many, if not most of you here are students, so almost everyone is senior to you at this point. So this is perhaps the most salient group for you. Obviously, your seniors are going to provide mentoring for you. And remember, I'm talking about both the people from your home country and the people in the place where you are manifesting your global surgery. Remember that they have so much to teach you about this work, about how you generate the enthusiasm for this work, about inspiration, about perspective, about how this work actually is, because we all enter into this work with rose-colored glasses. I know that I did, and your senior mentors, both from both of your institutions, can help you realize the reality, but also they can advocate and sponsor you. If you truly are looking to have a career in this field, you're going to need advocates, you're going to need sponsors, you're going to need people to kind of help you, guide you along the right path. And that's what this group of people is. I have certainly benefited in my time from senior mentors who have guided me along this path in various ways. The second group I wanted to talk about as far as relationships is your colleagues. And when I say your colleagues, I mean the people who you're actually on the coalface with, the people you're actually digging the ditch with, whether that is from your hometown or from the town you're doing the work in. These are the folk that you're actually getting the work done with. You have to have the trust and honesty so you can have meaningful conversations, open discussions. Sometimes they're difficult, sometimes they're challenging for both partners, but if you don't have a good solid relationship, you cannot have that discussion, and you really cannot engender the work that you should be doing. The obvious part of a good relationship with colleagues is friendships. I have friends from all over sub-Saharan Africa that I've known for 20 plus years through this work that I would never have met had I not engaged in this work. Good, solid friends who for whom the idea of sushi was anathema until on a trip we managed to get some sushi together. Apart from just the actual goodness of the work you're doing, those relationships will make the hard times that much easier to bear. And then the other part of this is the ideas. Most of any benefit to any of the work that I've been engaged in has come from ideas, have come from spitballing ideas at 3 in the morning at a hot and sweaty bus station in the middle of nowhere with friends, with colleagues who were just throwing some crazy ideas around, and lo and behold, you've got a new project on your hand. That is hard to do with people very much senior to yourself, and it's hard to do with juniors, but it's easy to do with colleagues if you have a good, strong relationship. And then the third group, and this may be hard for you to imagine at your level perhaps, but at some point you are going to have people junior to yourselves. And those people are the folks that you will provide the mentoring for. The mentoring that you have benefited from over the years, you will be able to provide for these junior colleagues. You will get to see them develop. You will get to see them and help them along their pathway in this world. I've had the pleasure of mentoring to some degree, but at least observing junior colleagues in sub-Saharan Africa who were medical students when I first met them and are now the heads of departments of academic centers in their hometowns, in their home cities. And that is wonderful to watch. It's wonderful to see that progression of global health through time. It is also easier if you have a relationship, if you have a good, honest, strong relationship with people, to advocate for them and to sponsor them, much like you were advocated for and sponsored in your junior years. This is an opportunity for you to do the same for others and to see them grow. And you cannot do that unless you have a good, strong relationship. And really, for me, other than the incremental improvements in some of the anesthesia provision in countries that I've been to, this for me has been the joy of my career in global health, has been the relationships that I've forged and the careers that I've seen develop. And it really is wonderful to see you all here. I hope you guys are going to get as much out of this as I'm sure has been put into it by your excellent panelists and discussants and keynote speakers. I wish you well in this conference, and I wish you well in your global health careers. And I am going to hand it back to Dr. Jayaraman.
Great. Actually, I will pass it on to the national team. Anusha and Blake, do you want to take it away?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you all for coming today. We're really excited to have all of you, and thank you to Dr. Jairam and Dr. Harris for kicking us off. My name is Blake Hauser, and I'm one of the national co-chairs along with Anusha Jairam, and we're so excited to welcome you to the 5th annual GSSA Symposium hosted by the University of Utah. I just wanted to say a few words to briefly introduce you to GSSA if you aren't familiar with the organization, and to remind you of some of the resources we offer and that we will continue to offer beyond the scope of just this conference. So GSSA was founded with the goal of helping students and trainees get involved in global surgery and learn more about global surgery as a field. So we found that students and trainees are incredibly passionate and are actively looking for ways to get involved in global surgery, but global surgery is often an underrepresented component of medical education and surgical training in the United States and other high-income countries in particular. And this contributes to a lack of understanding among students about what the field of global surgery actually is and how one can have a meaningful career in global surgery. And we also found that students often have misunderstandings or even a lack of knowledge about the ethics surrounding global health. And it's important to us as members of GSSA to help students become aware about how we can decolonize our actions in global health and our agendas in global surgery. Just to give you a brief overview of GSSA's organizational structure, we're actually the US National Working Group affiliated with Incision, which is a broader global surgery organization that serves students and trainees around the world. We launched in March of 2017 with our first Global Surgery Symposium, and we've grown to include a national team of student and resident leaders, as well as global surgery working groups at over 90 institutions within the United States. And those working groups as a whole, which are the heart and soul really of GSSA, serve about 3,500 trainees across the United States. And this is just a representative selection of some of the schools where there are GSSA chapters. To give you a brief overview of our resources, we offer a lot of different toolkits and also curricula and webinars that you can access all the time, either on our website or on our YouTube channel. And we hope that these will be useful tools for you as you learn more about global surgery and become interested in the field. In addition to hosting conferences and events, we also have a listserv, and we strive to create a network of different chapters. And we're happy to speak to anyone who's interested in starting a chapter in the United States or who would like to get more involved. And these are some of the ways that you can contact us. We look forward to engaging with you all this weekend and hopefully continuing to do so after the conference. Thank you. And I'll pass it over to Andrew and the team from the University of Utah.
Hi everyone, my name is Andrew Stevens. I'm a fourth-year medical student here at the University of Utah, and we're excited to have you all in attendance for this meeting. I want to thank the GSSA national team for giving the University of Utah the opportunity to host this conference. Although we're disappointed that you weren't able to attend this conference here in Utah, we're excited for the opportunities that this virtual format has given us to have a larger group of attendees throughout the world. I also want to thank my co-presidents, Kelly Tomanovich and Logan Beach, for their help during this conference, and for all the other medical students from the University of Utah for their contributions. We're also very grateful for the support from Dr. Jairam and Jonathan Nellermo for their support, and the wonderful faculty members here at the University of Utah and throughout the world who are contributing in this event. We're excited for this conference, and I hope everyone has an enjoyable experience. And I'll now turn the time over to Dr. DeVries, who will be introducing our keynote speaker.
Well, good evening, or earlier in the day, wherever you happen to be. From where I am, we're having a snowstorm. So we are delighted to have our first keynote speaker from Duke University. Dr. Tamara Fitzgerald is an associate professor in the Division of Pediatric Surgery. Excuse me, I'm a pediatric urologist, so it comes so naturally to me to say that. She's a pediatric surgeon at Duke University. Her academic focus is in global surgery, surgical capacity building, and cost-effective quality biomedical devices for low and middle income countries. She works with pediatric surgeons in sub-Saharan Africa to increase training and support for young surgeons, thereby improving children's access to surgical care. Access to surgical care worldwide is a pressing problem. and it affects millions of individuals. The solution to this problem lies in changing the way we view low and middle income countries, setting aside the missional mindset and adopting strategies of mentorship and empowerment. Dr. Fitzgerald received her BS and PhD in biomedical engineering and her MD from Boston University. Then she completed her general surgery and fellowship in pediatric surgery at Yale New Haven, and now she's at Duke. So we're delighted to welcome Dr. Fitzgerald, and I will hand the video over to her.
Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction, and I'm very excited to be here speaking today. Let me see if I can share my screen. So today I'm going to be talking about medical device innovation in Uganda, all hands on deck. And what I'd like to say before I start this presentation is I'm the one that happens to be talking, but there are a lot of people involved in this project who have contributed in big and small ways. And so this work represents the work of a lot of people and not just myself. We have a few disclosures to make, and actually I'm very excited about these disclosures because most of the funding from this project has actually not come from me. The Basque Connections project has supported us at Duke, but two of our Ugandan investigators have secured funding. Olive Peace secured funding. She's an undergraduate in the biomedical engineering program there. And also Julius Mugaga got some money from the Makerere University Research Innovations Fund. And then the other two things on the list were things that undergraduates at Duke actually were able to secure to get this project going. So I want to first start out just by saying innovation is all about thinking differently. And part of my training was in biomedical engineering. But I think back when I was a student and I was pursuing a PhD, I didn't really think about global health as being part of that biomedical engineering initiative. To me, biomedical engineering was doing something really, really super high tech and really, really cutting edge. And for whatever reason, just in my mind, global health didn't really fit into that. And so I had to really kind of open my view and change my way of thinking later on in my career. So in January 2013, that was the first time that I went to Uganda. And at that time, Daruk Asgaitas and John Sekabira already had an ongoing partnership. And while I was there, I had the privilege of getting to know Anne Wasonga. So I was a pediatric surgery fellow at the time, and Anne was a resident in general surgery. And Anne was very interested in gastroschisis. And so she wanted to do her thesis on gastroschisis, and she asked me to help her with that project. Gastroschisis is actually one of the most challenging conditions in sub-Saharan Africa. In the United States, if you're born with gastroschisis, all of your intestines are out of your body, and it is treated by placing the bowel into a silo, which is a specialized bag. And then over time, you can reduce the intestines into the abdomen and you can close the defect, and you can see the cosmetic result is quite good. And in high income countries, the survival is over 95%. However, in most of sub-Saharan Africa, the survival is very, very low. And so Anne wanted to study this disease. So what she did is she posted a notice on the hospital wall saying, any baby with gastroschisis, please call surgery immediately. And for 1 year, we enrolled all the babies who presented. So there were 42 babies, and out of all those babies, there was only one baby that survived that year. And there were many reasons for mortality. A lot of them were septic or had necrotic intestine when they arrived. There was a lack of operating room availability, and just an overall perceived poor prognosis. So there wasn't a lot of effort putting into helping these babies survive. And we looked at the data more carefully. We found that most of them did not have a prenatal diagnosis. So you can imagine if you're a mom and you've delivered a baby out in a rural part of Africa and you didn't even know this was coming, and then your baby is born with all of their intestines out of their abdomen, that's a very big problem. And you can see, this is a map of Uganda showing where all of these moms and babies were coming from, and they were coming from all over the country. And in fact, a lot of them did not deliver in a health facility. They traveled many miles to get to the hospital. And a lot of them traveled on boda-bodas or cars for hire. So they did not have access to ambulances or transportation like that. So in 2016, we were able to write this up in the Journal of Pediatric Surgery. But I think what this study really did is it helped us to start thinking about what are the major problems and what things can we start addressing. So there was no prenatal diagnosis. Delivery at a tertiary center was very rare because these moms didn't know that they were going to have a baby with gastroschisis. There were problems with resuscitation and post-op care. There is no total parenteral nutrition. So a lot of these babies died from starvation. There was also a lot of sepsis and problems with accessing the operating room, and they didn't have silos. So here in red, these are the things that we thought that maybe we could tackle with the resources that we have. So Anne Wasonga actually did a follow-up study where she basically created a clinical protocol, and she was able to reduce mortality from gastroschisis from almost 100% down to 60%. And she did this by looking at some of the challenges. So the big thing was changing the attitude in the unit, getting everybody to really get on board and get excited about these babies and really take it seriously and see what we could do. They also developed an improvised silo. So they were taking either a glove or a urine bag and then suturing it to the abdominal wall. We also came up with other ways of closing the defect such that we didn't have to take the babies to the operating room. Early feeding was a big step forward because there's no TPN, so we did not starve the babies. We tried to feed them early. Also getting the mothers incorporated into the nursing care and trying to activate post-op care with the nurses. So using this dedicated protocol, Anne Wasonga was able to reduce the mortality from gastroschisis by almost 40%, which is huge. And this is just a sample of what the protocol looks like. There's a lot of steps, but it's really about when the baby arrives, getting the baby warmed, getting the baby IV fluids, and really early feeding is the key. So they were having the mom express early colostrum onto a gauze and then having babies suck on the gauze to keep up their feeding skills, and then really doing early breastfeeding. But one of the major problems that we identified during this time was that the silos are a big problem. So you can see this is an improvised silo, and by suturing it to the abdominal wall, it really is tearing up the tissue in the area, and a lot of babies were getting infections or they were having tissue breakdown, and it was making it more difficult later to close the defect. So in response to this, at Duke University, Ann Satterback has a class for the freshman engineering students, and anybody can come as a client to the class and present a task that you want to present to the students to work on. So I came as a client to her class and basically proposed that I wanted the students to develop a silo that can only be made from materials that are available in sub-Saharan Africa. And at that time, Nasser Kakembo, who's one of the pediatric surgeons in Uganda, he was also visiting the United States. And so he also met with the students in the first year design class to talk to them about gastroschisis and what the needs of patients would be in Uganda. So from that, the students came up with some design criteria. The first thing is that we wanted the cost to be less than $5 US. The materials have to be available in sub-Saharan Africa. In terms of the silo geometry, we wanted an opening diameter of the silo to be about 5 centimeters, and the total volume of the silo has to be at least 500 milliliters. The opening has to be deformable such that you can place the bowel in, you can squeeze the opening of the silo and get it to go under the abdomen so that it doesn't pop out. We also wanted the silo bowl to be durable, watertight, and easy to manufacture. After this, the students evaluated all kinds of different materials and then weighted these according to a Pew scoring matrix to pick out which would be the most usable. And in the end, the design that they came up with was using a urine collection bag and then the ring from a female condom. They also evaluated different ways of sealing the silo, and in the end, what they came up with was that using an iron to heat seal and then using thread to sew it was the most durable and also has the least water leakage. They then performed a study where they asked different colleagues in many different countries in sub-Saharan Africa if they could access these supplies easily and how much they would cost. And you can see that it's very accessible and the cost is reasonable. So right now we are constructing the silos in Uganda. Dr. Sesaclito and Dr. Satterback, they also have a shipping container makerspace project. So in this project, there is one shipping container at Duke, and there's an identical shipping container at Makerere University. And the shipping containers, they both contain the exact same materials and tools and things like this. And so it's a way that two groups can collaborate to build devices, and you know that the other side has the exact same materials. So it's a way of collaborating to have a makerspace. So right now we're building the Gastroschisis silos in the makerspace. We've also conducted some early animal studies just to make sure that the two silos are equivalent and that they're not bacteriogenic, since sepsis is a big issue. And we're getting ready to start a clinical feasibility study. So Anne Wasonga, she's in the process of getting this through the IRB at Makerere. But basically, we want to do a feasibility study for 30 babies that come in with gastroschisis. And we're going to collect clinical parameters and also interview the parents about how they feel about the device, if it was acceptable, and interview the other surgeons and nurses who will be using the device. At that point, everybody will reconvene and decide if there are any modifications that need to happen. So overall, this process is called the Hear, Create, Deliver, which means that you listen to the people who are going to use your product and you interview them and find out what they need. You then create a product and deliver it to them, and it becomes a cyclical process where you keep improving the product based on feedback. In the few minutes we have left, I just want to touch upon some issues which we're investigating now, which is if you really want to think about getting this to patients, you need to think about regulatory issues. So for us in the United States, a regulatory body would be the Food and Drug Administration. And in fact, a lot of countries in sub-Saharan Africa, they just use the FDA, or in Europe, you would get the CE mark. And if your product is approved by the FDA or the CE mark, then usually you can just automatically get approval in most African countries. But the problem with this is that it creates barriers for local innovators to innovate, because getting things through the CE mark or getting it through the FDA is very, very costly. And you won't recoup that money back when you try to sell the product in a low income country. So what we did is we looked at the regulatory levels in all of the Gssa countries. And you can see that whether or not you have a robust regulatory process is highly correlated to the gross domestic product. And it's also highly correlated to how long your country has been free from colonialization. So I think going forward, this is a major issue that should be addressed, that there needs to be some harmonization of standards in countries in sub-Saharan Africa so that they can have their own regulatory process and they're not depending on regulatory processes of high-income countries, because obviously there's different needs in low and middle income countries. Another issue that exists is proper business models. So if you're going to develop a medical device, in order for it to be sustainable, you have to have some way of manufacturing it in the country and selling it. And so our team, we basically kind of looked into different business models that have worked for different medical devices. And again, a lot of medical devices, because we're so much in the system of like using our FDA and the CE mark, we tend to make medical devices that fit the needs of high income countries and fit our system so that we can make money in our system and then maybe give the device away in low income countries or sell it for a reduced cost. But I would argue that what we really need to do is develop some business models and ways of doing things so that devices can be innovated in low and middle income countries and they can be manufactured there and sold there without really ever involving high income countries. Lastly, I just want to leave you with this innovative thought. So in 1903, this is the first year that anybody ever flew. Before that, humans did not fly, everything stuck to the ground, we have gravity. But in 1903, the Wright brothers in Kitty Hawk, North Carolina, had the first flight. Then in 1969, which is just 60 years later, we have the first man going to the moon. So if you think about that, it's only a 60-year period, which is less than someone's lifetime. We went from never having flown at all to putting somebody on the moon. And I just think it's a good example of what we can do when we change the way that we think about something and we open up a new technology or a new innovation. This is a quote from President Kennedy when he spoke at Rice University right before we sent somebody to the moon. And he said, "We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade, not because it is easy, but because it is hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills, because that challenge is one that we are willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one in which we intend to win." And so I think gastroschisis is a war that we are slowly winning. So in conclusion, I just want to leave you guys all with a thought that there are a lot of problems in global surgery, but so many of these problems are solvable in our lifetime. And the key to solving these problems, I think, is multidisciplinary teamwork. Things we really kind of need to think about going forward are medical device regulation and business models that are developed from within the African context and do not depend on reliance on high-income countries. And I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone has. Thank you.
Dr. Fitzgerald, thank you so very much for your time and an amazing presentation. I'm sure everyone in the audience enjoyed it just as much as we did watching you today. We've been getting some really great questions. We're excited to share some of those questions with you guys, as well as just kind of get this conversation started. So again, if anything comes up during this Q&A session, guys, feel free to please continue to share them with us in the Q&A and we'll be happy to share them. One of the first questions that I have here is, when you describe the design criteria, definitely a lot of specifics, and it seemed like a lot of thoughtfulness went into actually having that outline. Can you kind of describe some of the process that your team put forward in establishing those guidelines, and kind of what were some of your motivations for establishing it as you guys did? Thank you.
I mean, I think the biggest motivation is just the thought that babies in the world are dying of something that we have the solution for is completely unacceptable. So that was the motivation. But in terms of coming up with the criteria, a lot of it was based just on interviewing physicians about what they thought was important and what they would need. So when Nasser Kakembo was there, I think it was really important for the students to talk to him and just get his feedback on what kind of design criteria were important to him.
Yeah, another question that came in was kind of hinting at the post-pandemic stage where we have so much more technologic capabilities to do virtual education and virtual collaboration. Have you seen or foresee any opportunities to have collaborative longitudinal educational interventions from a high-income country to a developing country? Because that seems to be kind of the barrier between a lot of these regulatory issues and business models.
Yeah, I do. I think there's a lot of things that people have that are ongoing. I know for our group of pediatric surgeons, so they have a fellowship program in Uganda, and there's a group of us that kind of provide intermittent support, although we're not as needed now as we once were, because now they have a lot of pediatric surgeons. But we've actually gone to an online format where every other week we are meeting over Zoom and doing teaching sessions and also helping the fellows prepare for their board exams. I know that Suda, she has a lot of innovations in global surgical education, and she's working on putting together a global surgery course. That would be something everybody could engage in. Yeah, Suda just launched it into the chat. So yeah, I think there's tons of opportunities to use this new technology that we've gotten used to using for sure. But I am looking forward to going back to going there in person.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you so much. Another question is kind of a little bit more of a personal one. And we're wondering a bit if you could speak to, or kind of going back to when you were a medical student or even a pre-medical student times, and discussing a bit about what were some of your motivations that kind of got you interested in surgery and then kind of led to your passion in global surgery. And people will be curious to know about your career trajectory and kind of how you ended up where you are now.
Yeah. I kind of always knew that I wanted to do something in global health. I don't know how I knew that. It was something that I thought I would want to do. I did not think I wanted to do surgery. So I think I had a lot of misconceptions about what surgery was like. And as a woman, you know, I wanted to have kids. And in my mind, that those two things were not compatible. So I actually did surgery as my first rotation because I thought we better just do that first and get that over with. And then when I did it, I absolutely loved it. And I realized what a powerful specialty it is, because you can really change what happens to somebody with a very short intervention. So I think that's why I loved surgery. And then towards the end of my medical school career, I went on a rotation to Cameroon, and I worked for a month there with a surgeon. And yeah, I just totally loved it. I love being in Africa. I love the people that are there. Yeah, so that's kind of how I ended up. But at the time, global surgery wasn't even a thing, right? So I didn't know how I was going to do anything with my career related to that. I think a lot of people did infectious diseases as an academic thing. But even when I was graduating fellowship, the term global surgery was not really a term yet. So I think now it's a lot better because everybody's recognizing how important it is and that it is a valid academic interest.
Another question would be, so when you were talking about the silos for engineering, there's a lot of regulatory issues, resource constraints, attitude problems or challenges to overcome. What has been your general approach, and what has been successful in your experience for a medical student or future physician to kind of approach that overwhelming barrier, that feeling of overwhelming barrier to, start at a point and make progress on that goal?
Yeah, I think you just have to start with the resources that you have and what you can do. And I think you just have to know what you're passionate about and what you're willing to do, even if nobody else is coming with you. And if you start going in that direction, my experience has been that the people who are interested will come with you, and the resources that you need will come. So I think you just have to start somewhere, and you just have to start with what you have, even if it's just a small thing, and it will grow.
Definitely. I really like that one. So kind of be more mission directed, and things kind of fall into place when you start doing the work, is what it's sounding like.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Another question that we just got here in the chat was, have you and your colleagues implemented any programs or had success increasing prenatal ultrasound use and diagnosis for gastroschisis, especially for mothers who may live further away from the hospital or are equipped to actually handle the case? This particular attendee mentioned that their group faces very similar challenges to what you were experiencing as well.
We haven't done that yet, but that's something that I would really like to do. I kind of brushed over it in the talk, but actually 10 babies in the study had an ultrasound done, but they didn't pick up that they had gastroschisis when they did the ultrasound. So I think there's a lot of opportunities for capacity building and for teaching. And something that I would like to do with the silo, actually, since a lot of these babies are born far, far away from the hospital, and it's a surprise that they're being born, is if we could teach the midwives how to place the silo so that the bowel could get into the silo before they even make their journey to the hospital, then it would prevent the babies from getting dehydrated and might prevent their bowel from getting septic, and would make it so we could reduce the bowel faster. And so I think that would improve survival. So yeah, I think there's a lot of opportunities to pull in like the OBGYNs and the midwives and the ultrasonographers for sure.
I don't see any more questions in the chat right now or the Q&A.
I actually just got one here too.
Yep.
All right. So this question is asking about, how do you feel high-income students interested in innovation for LMICs or low resource settings can equitably get involved? And should they start by finding partners in an LMIC?
I think as a student, it might be more difficult to find a partner on your own. I think if you can find a faculty member or somebody who's been already working in the country for quite some time, that can really help, because it takes a long time to develop a partnership. Partnerships, they're really focused on relationship. They're not so much focused on a project, right? The projects are a fruit of the relationship. So I think it's really helpful if you can find somebody who's already established a relationship, and you can be mentored by them in how they keep that relationship going. That would be my advice.
All right, and we have another question here. And in this case, we're talking a little bit about the conference. So the conference is themed around all sorts of partnerships. And what's something important that you've learned in forming partnerships and collaborations that you feel will be really helpful for students and trainees to also know about?
I think you have to always prioritize relationship above everything else. Because I think sometimes, especially like us high income country people, right? We get so focused on doing this project or doing this research study or getting this grant. Like, we're very task oriented in high income countries. And I think that's one of the real gifts that low and middle income countries can teach us, is I feel like when you're there, they place more value on relationships than we do. And so I've learned a lot from my colleagues in LMICs about relationships, and also every day they have all of these challenges that they somehow manage to keep going and doing what they're doing. So I've also learned a lot from them about perseverance. And when the first thing goes wrong, you just kind of ignore that thing that went wrong, and you just keep going and going and going at what you want to achieve. Yeah, so I think that's one thing I've really learned from them.
Another question that I saw was, do you have any advice for medical students or trainees who are involved, who are interested in getting involved with innovation and global surgery and the marriage of the two?
Yeah, I mean, I think well, first of all, I think you should definitely try to do some kind of a global health rotation, or go visit a partnership that is being done well. Because it's very hard to get involved in innovation if you've never been to a low and middle income country. So you really have to go and spend some time there and learn about, you know, just what it's really like there and what the challenges are and what the obstacles are. So that's the first thing. In terms of innovation, I would say use whatever your strength is. So I kind of shared at the beginning of the talk how I had a PhD in biomedical engineering, but when I was looking at what I was going to do with my global health career, I wasn't even thinking that I was going to incorporate engineering, because kind of in my mind, I had this weird stereotype that engineering and global health, those are like two really different things. So I would say, think about what your strengths are and what you can bring to the table. And whatever it is, it's totally applicable to global health.
Wonderful, thank you.
Kind of following along with the same theme, another question is, based off your experiences so far, especially in the field of global surgery, what is kind of your take on where the future direction of global surgery is going and what it might look like, especially for current medical students who are still in the early stages of their training?
Well, I think it's changing very quickly. And I think we're definitely, like I said, like I think a lot of these problems are solvable in our lifetime. So I think we're really going to move to a place where, instead of where we think about LMICs as a place where we go to like mentor people, we're really moving towards a model where it's about partnerships and it's about people learning from each other and having teams that collaborate together, and less so about accomplishing a mission or something like that. So yeah, I think definitely like sustainable partnerships, that's really the future of where things are going. And it's kind of my dream that 20 years from now, I'll show up in Uganda and nobody will really need me to do anything. I'll just go on safari when I go there. We're kind of getting to that point now, because now, when I first started going there, John Sekabira was the only pediatric surgeon. But now, a lot of fellows have graduated from his program. And so when I go, I kind of feel like, I don't know that you guys really need me to come and do cases with you anymore, because you guys like have so many surgeons and you're training surgeons yourself. Like you don't really need me anymore.
I guess one question that I personally had for you, Dr. Fitzgerald, was you talked about the business model, that one slide that you had up, and working with kind of the regulatory issues that we have with the FDA and things like that. How do you see, like, do you have any solutions in your mind of how those countries like Uganda or Ghana can have a successful business model with those local partners in country and develop that? Is that something that we can take part in, or is that something that they is more so a independent process for them?
Well, I think there's no one business model that could work, right? There could be lots of different ones that can work. And I think in the beginning, it's great for people to collaborate and to bring their skills to the table. So I think I could see either one of them working. You can have a business model where maybe people from high-income countries and low-income countries collaborate to make the business work. Or you could have something that's just totally internal to the country, and somebody, you know, living in Uganda who really has a gift for business and the way that things progress, who could really get something like that off the ground and running. But it certainly helps if you have some people to invest. So that might be more where the high income countries come in, if, you know, people who have those kind of resources are willing to make those investments.
Awesome, awesome. And another question that we had in the chat was from Dr. DeVries, and they said that they have the same problem with extra fee and cloacal extra fee, and will you teach the management of that as well?
Yeah, actually, so one of our fellows, she in Uganda, she went to Canada and did a fellowship there, and she also did a fellowship in urology. So I will freely admit she knows way more about urologic problems and anal rectal malformations than I do. So Phyllis Gssa is the surgeon. I'll leave it to her to like teach everybody in Uganda about those things. But yeah, when I go, I do usually do a lot of anal rectal malformation cases. I don't know, did that answer your question? I feel like I'm not sure if that answered the question she was asking. She said, yes, she knows Phyllis. Yeah, actually the team in Uganda, they just separated conjoined twins who had they were like joined at the pelvis. And so they have kind of a very complicated anal rectal malformation and urinary issue. And Phyllis was the one that coordinated that whole team. So yeah, like I said, they clearly like don't need me because they're separating conjoined twins.
All right, so thank you so much, Dr. Fitzgerald, for your time. We're kind of coming to that close here and moving on to the next, getting ready to move on to the next session. And we just want to again thank you for giving this amazing presentation and sharing so much information with us. We're very grateful for your time. And with that, we're going to go ahead and hand it back over to Andrew and the rest of the team so we can get ready for the next segment. Thank you again so much for your time. We really appreciate you.
Thank you, Dr. Fitzgerald.
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Fitzgerald. We really appreciate that. At this time, we're going to move on to the next portion of our conference. We're going to share a couple of videos that were submitted for our video competition. And so the first video we have is by Dana Mateus from the Federal University of Health Sciences of Porto Alegre in Brazil. Sorry about that. Let's see if
Hi to everyone. My name is Dana Gomes Mateus. I am a Brazilian student in the third year of medicine at the Federal University of Health and Science in Porto Alegre in Brazil. So my native language is Portuguese. Sorry for any mistake that I probably will make in this video. I'm just saying earlier to prevent. And when I was preparing my speech, it occurred to me that I was feeling like I was going to speak at the United Nations or open a WHO Congress. And I realized that isn't real. This is how it's supposed to be. This is how we feel every time we're going to present a job to a mentor, professor, or colleagues, or anyone who want to hear. And although I don't have much experience on a global level, this is my second international congress. Last year, I was honored to present an abstract to the Neurological Surgery Study Program at an online congress of Weill Cornell Medicine, and something that technology has made it possible. And that's how I had the opportunity to be with students all over the world, and we experienced the thrill to present an international congress. The fun is that everyone was just as nervous as I was, even those who has already had the experience, and others was presenting in another language for the first time, like me. And we were all afraid of the questions, what they're going to ask to us, why they have to ask anything. But it was awesome, and we all presented, and we all made it. And this is kind of international events has a great difficult that is also a beautiful quality, that is the language barrier. And the language barrier creates an engagement and a unique involvement. It's amazed me to see everyone trying to understand and involving everybody in the room and trying to speak the same language of science and knowledge. And this is worthy. This is big and important as any speech in WHO. And this kind of experience changes inside and show us the world, open doors to new possibilities that we would never had ever considered before. In addition to showing the incredible human capacity of empathy, helping each other, listen, connecting, and learning with other human beings to grow up together. This may seem simple and small, but opening up opportunity for students all over the world to share their experience and listen their experience and open to them listen new experience adds a sense of belonging. And one congress can make a lot of difference and made me look for new different countries to meet brilliant co-workers around the world. And here I am today, honored to share experience with all of them, doctors and students from such different cultures, striving to be better and more up-to-date professionals. So I want to thank you everyone for the opportunity. Thank you for listening to me, and had an awesome congress, not only this one, for a lot of yet to come. And thank you for everything. Bye-bye.
our next video is by Julius Ning from the International Medical University in Malaysia.
Hi, I'm Julius, a junior doctor in Malaysia. Since 2017, I founded Incision Malaysia, an organization that advocates, educates, and research on global surgery. I've collaborated with the Malaysian government in organizing a road safety campaign, also organized a national level student-led basic trauma workshop, and co-authored two papers with the Global Search team on cancer mortality and timing of surgery for COVID-19 patients. So I'm excited to share briefly my global surgery experience here with you. It all started in my third year of medical school in 2017. I was selected as a student representative to attend the World Congress of Surgery. at Switzerland with a bunch of enthusiastic delegates from all around the world. It was fun meeting new friends and learning about surgery. This was when global surgery research caught my attention and ignited my interest to do more research in this area. 5 billion do not have timely access to surgical care, so I knew immediately that I wanted to make a change in this. Following the World Congress of Surgery, I went to Romania for a student-led surgical symposium where I got to know Incision International through Dominic, who was the previous co-chair of Incision. So this sparked my interest, which eventually led me to joining Incision International team, where I met virtually with many like-minded people. So at the World Congress of Surgery, I've networked with some giants in the surgical field and also landed myself on a clinical observership in Japan. This gave me an important exposure that I needed. Subsequently, after that, I was appointed the Asian chapter lead from ISSS, and this has been very rewarding and inspiring for me. I've experienced many roadblocks in this journey too. For example, it took 2 years for Incision Malaysia to finally be established and registered as an official NGO. It took hours and hours of work, planning rejections after rejections, and I'm glad to have a supportive team. I cannot emphasize the importance of teamwork and collaboration enough. With Incision Malaysia, we organized the first Global Surgery Symposium in Malaysia and even had the Director General of Health to officiate the ceremony. We also had the privilege to organize a series of global surgery and rural surgery related webinars and design a global surgery module for students. Hard work really pays off, as I now see the next generation of medical students taking the lead on the global surgery movement in my country. And I really hope to see more collaborations in the future. I think collaboration is important, and I especially appreciate the hard work that was put in by the many people organizing big events such as the World Congress of Surgery. They created a unique platform and opportunity for curious students like me to explore, to meet new people and learn new things. Like the butterfly effect, attending the conference led me to meeting new people, founding an organization, and making a change where I'm from. Thank you.
And our final video is by Hassan Ali from Ahmad University in Somaliland.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Ramadan Kareem. My name is Dr. Hassan Ali from Somaliland, and I would like to share here with my story of global surgery and how it came. When I started in the medical school, particularly the basic, for my first 2 years, I have joined as a volunteer National Fistula Hospital, where more than 500 women from the Somali-speaking regions used to come for life-saving surgical procedures for fistula repair. And in that hospital, I have experienced one of the great needs of in our health sector, particularly our women needs more obstetricians and gynecologists. As soon as I started the my clinical training at Borum Regional Hospital, I was assigned to go to on the maternity ward where we were doing the clinical rotation. And I have lost for the first week 2 women who died, preventable causes, which were bleeding during pregnancy. One was antepartum hemorrhage, the other one was postpartum hemorrhage, and the hospital didn't have a blood bank facility. And I managed to work with the hospital admin, and we established a Borum blood bank. We collected the money through GoFundMe page, me and other friends from the UK and Somaliland as well. And then I have recognized women were not reaching the hospital at the right time, and as well as people who live in the remote areas was not receiving the care they needed. So a friend of mine from Germany called Michelle has also managed to support me to receive an ambulance and and as well as obstetric ultrasound machine to support women in that region, and that has contributed a great success to the reduction of maternal mortality rate in adult region. After that, in my fifth year, I have met with Dominic from Incision, who introduced me global surgery as well. And I was lucky to succeed the travel scholarship of UGSS 2018, but I couldn't manage to come, and I'd like to establish Incision Somaliland, which became the first surgical network established in Somaliland. Through Incision Somaliland, we have managed to organize conferences where surgeons can share their work at the operating rooms. It was the first, we created the first conference where surgeons were discussing about equity in surgery and the surgical procedures. Both local and international surgeons who were working in the country. After that, one of the great successes we have reached, we established it again. We organized another conference for anesthesia providers in Somaliland, and then they also shared their knowledge, and after the end of the conference they established themselves as a national anesthesia network, and luckily the next year of last year 2019 they organized their own conference, and we attended as a guests. Through Incision Somaliland we have improved the education of surgical education in Somaliland. We have luckily managed to bring surgeons from different parts of the world with different specific specialties, particularly cardiothoracic surgery, which was a sector that we didn't have previously. So that doctor has trained our residents in the hospital, and as well as intern doctors and medical students. And so we're very proud and happy to be active in the community as a global surgery advocates. Lastly, we have managed to not to grow inside the country, but as well as to reach to participate in international conferences, include Incision Global Surgery Symposium 2019 in Kigali, Rwanda, where we presented about our work. And also we have luckily, we're very lucky to be at the World Congress of Surgery 2019 in Poland, Krakow, where we presented the development of Somaliland surgical departments, both progress and challenges. So the only thing is like the only way I can I see the development of our health sector is when we establish the proper organizations through the health sector. And my biggest dream is to see Somaliland Surgical Society, development of Somaliland surgical societies. And I think we are going to bring hope, and we are the future of the operating rooms of Somaliland.
And we'll be sending an email here shortly with links to all the videos for registered conference attendees to view them again, as well as a link to a Google form where you can vote on your favorite email or favorite video. Great. So now we're going to move to the social hour. In your email, you should have a link to Wonder or access to the link to Wonder. It's a platform where we're going to have different rooms with different topics where you can join. When you get there, you can drag your icon around and meet up with other conference attendees, and it will start kind of like a video chat there where you can be able to interact with them in different rooms, talk about different topics, and meet other students throughout the world. And after that session, so in about 45 minutes, we'll start our subspecialty breakout rooms that will also be on Zoom. It's a different Zoom link, which you should also have access. If you have any questions, please feel free to email us and we'll help you get to where you need to be. Thank you.